Good morning, friends. Thanks for joining this morning. This is Journey Home Meditation, and you're listening to the morning sit. We're going to do a brief sit this morning. A little bit of poems, some thoughts that I've been having, and we'll sit and find some meditative space together. So, thanks for joining, and I'm happy to be here. This morning is going to be a brief sit, as I've had a lot of things on my plate already today, and it's gotten me thinking. Sometimes when I have a lot of things piled on all at once, and I don't think that I am particularly unique in this, that sometimes when I have a lot of things come on at once, I get anxiety. And it's not the type of anxiety that is generally recognized, or that I recognized as anxiety for most of my life. Anxiety, I have always kind of attributed the aspects of anxiety to be nervousness, fear, an elevated heart rate, sensitivity, and irritability. All those things, those are the kind of symptoms of my general anxiety. But what I notice, that when things are like thrown on me all at once, I get what is it that I get? I get kind of snippy. Like I get this it's not anger, but it's not pleasant. It's not a pleasant feeling. And I can start being nitpicky about things, especially, to other people in my surroundings. And it's something I'm just now beginning to recognize as some sort of a response to the stimulus. I think I was able to usually rationalize it as being kind of a justifiable response. Because I can find rationalization for the things I'm nitpicking about. Of course, that's, we nitpick at things that we can have a proven thing to say, this is unjust. This is not right. And I think that the reason that I do that, and maybe the reason that some of you may do that as well, is when we have a lot of things thrown on us, we get a feeling of overwhelm, and we get a sensation of maybe it touches into a belief that we're not going to be able to do it. We're not good enough. I don't have the capability to handle this. I don't have the abilities that are being asked of me. I don't have the time. I don't have the expertise, whatever it is. And so we start to feel insecure. And then a defense mechanism that we could go to in that case would be to make everybody else self-aware of the little things they're doing wrong, as a defense mechanism to defer people from seeing what we're doing. Like, I don't know if defer is the right word. We're not putting it off. We're trying to detract, I guess, from our fear of not being good enough in the moment. And this is a big convoluted thing. I get that. But this is what happens when I'm left alone to my thoughts. I start inspecting what the motivators might be behind my actions. And then I recognized, and this happened this morning, I came downstairs and I woke up before my alarm to the sound of rain, and realized, I left the windows down in the van last night. And so I jumped up and ran downstairs in my shorts and just threw on a pair. I went to throw on a pair of shoes, and I was going to just throw a jacket over top because I needed to run out in the rain. And but as I ran around down the stairs around the corner to get my shoes, I stepped in a large mushy pile of dog excrement. um, and I didn't realize what it was at first because it was totally dark in my house. And so I turned on a light and I looked and I saw what I was standing in, and there were multiple piles of doggy doo. And, I was barefoot, so I freaked out for a second internally and ran to the bathroom, hobbling, and hopped in the shower and washed my feet off. And then I had the task of cleaning this up, but I also had the task of getting out to do the van. And so I had to quickly reprioritize my morning, and I went out to do the van, and the van wouldn't start. The batteries were dead. So I had to jump the van to be able to start it, to be able to roll up the windows, to be able to get back in, to clean up the dog poo, to realize that our power was so low because we have solar power, and it's winter and it's rainy. Uh, and it was too low to turn the lights on, so I had to clean up the dog poo by candlelight and headlamp. Then I found more of it. All of these things, right? Like, you get the point here, I think, that this morning my plan was to get up earlier, um, do an hour of my, asanas, and then come in early to journey home and do this sit at 8 AM. Uh but that was my plan. And so all these other things started happening, and as I'm doing this, about an hour later, people are coming downstairs to, make themselves their morning drink and grab their belongings and get going to their various places. And people were a little annoyed that it was all by candlelight, and they were asking, and instead of just answering, because I could understand why they would be like, why are we using candles? Like, we are not Amish. uh, I had I had the opportunity there to just explain, like, oh yeah, the power is extremely low. If we turn on the lights, it's going to die. So we just want to use the candlelight and headlamps. And I did the dog poo, but I didn't do any of that. I didn't explain any of that. I just got a little snippy about something and immediately caught myself this morning, which is good because I don't usually catch myself until I'm 4 or 5 lines in, at which point it's double down or die, right? Like, I'm either going to double down on my crappy attitude, and defend it to the death, or I'm going to slink away uh, in embarrassment. But this morning I caught it, and I realized what was happening was, in doing all of these things, I felt overwhelmed, and I did not take the moment to soften myself. I did not soften myself into all the little things that were in front of me. So as one thing happened, I had to do 3 other things. So instead of softening and slowing down, I hardened myself and moved on. And then all of a sudden things are piling up. And then the next thing that comes up. And, I'm not saying that the van didn't start because the battery was dead to teach me some universal lesson, but it was definitely an opportunity. The dog poop was an opportunity. The power being so low was an opportunity. uh, all of these things met me where I was, and I hardened to them. And so with my hardening, things are bouncing off of me, right? I'm not receiving, I'm deflecting everything that comes in. And if you're listening, that's the sound of me smacking my hands. If you're watching, you can see I'm illustrating uh, that when we harden ourselves as a defense mechanism, we have a harder time receiving. And if we have a difficult time receiving, then we are not going to be able to accept what's happening in the moment. But if we can soften ourselves, we can gently receive, and we can sit with and process things as they are, not as we wish they were not. And that's important. Frank Ostaseski, one of my teachers that I love his writings and I love his teachings. He says, I know one thing I know is with if we do not soften our heart, we cannot find liberation. And I think that that really hits home to me because I spent a lot of years of my life thinking that I was fighting for liberation. I spent a lot of years of my life as a far left anarchist, which, those values are still deeply embedded in me. But the actions that I was taking to try to illustrate those values were hardening myself, steadfast, hardening against the enemy, hardening against the state, hardening against oppression, hardening against the police, hardening against the corporations. Whatever it was, I was hardening myself against these things, fortifying myself. And each of those things may have been an opportunity for me to actually receive in a different way. Now, this often gets misconstrued by people who are hardening themselves as you're being you're saying that you should just accept things as they are. No, I should accept that things are this way and move forward in action then. But once I can accept that I am in the position to receive what's happening and transform it instead of being in the position to be attacked by things and have to fight against it, that changes my relationship. And all of this is simply about changing my relationship to myself, first and foremost. Why is it that my go to is to harden myself against things? That's something I need to look at, right? That's something I have an opportunity to sit down with and get to know a little bit. And as I get to know something, I find it harder and harder to reject it. And that goes for people as well. So this morning, I took a moment and I realized as I was being kind of shitty to my family, and not extremely so, but just enough, just enough, just being a little bit snippy. Uh, when you ask a question you already know the answer to, why? Why are you doing that? I was doing that. I had that moment to recognize I am not breathing gently into my belly. I'm not breathing gently into my body. I'm breathing short and stuttered into my chest and holding my breath. So I've hardened my body, hardened my torso, my stomach, all these things I'm protecting, covering my heart with hardness. So I took a few breaths, just a few gentle breaths, just breathing into my nose, to the bottom of my belly, releasing. And just feeling where the hardness is and breathing into that space. And letting it go. And this is where the practice really gets important because then you learn, oh, I need to change my posture. Straighten my spine a bit. There we go. Lift my chin. Have a little confidence. Breathe gently into the belly. And there it is. Now I can feel a gentleness and a softness in my belly. I can feel a gentleness in my chest. And then I can move into my day with a little bit more openness and ability to receive. So I did that and then recognized, I was just kind of crappy to my son. So I looked at Finn, I said, hey, and I gave him a compliment, because I realized I was just a little crappy and I gave him a compliment. And then I said, and I'm sorry if I was harsh a moment ago. I think that I was unaware of how affected I was by all of this stuff this morning. And Finn looked at me like like he didn't know that I was being crappy. He was like, "Oh no, it's totally fine. Like I get it. That's a lot. I love you. Bye." And he was out the door. Uh, Small things, using our ability to soften ourselves and then finding kindness towards others to bring them up, to brighten their day. These are things we can do. We got some conversation in the chat here. If you're viewing this, you have the ability to comment. I think I might be able to see most people's comments, but one of the Sangha members that is with us regularly says, I recently realized that I had been taking things like that personally, the dog poop, the dead van, the power being so low, but it's not. Just because it feels like attacks on my nervous system and sanity. Absolutely. That's absolutely what it is that we're doing. Uh, because in some way we have learned to take responsibility for everybody's well-being when we were young, um, least of which being our own. And so anything that feels like it might not be uh, comfortable for everyone is my responsibility, which equates in my mind of punishment to my fault. Well, this is my fault. I should have made sure Shanty went out last night. This is my fault. But then I go, ooh, I'm going to deflect that and say, why didn't you let Shanty out last night? Well, why didn't I? Like these things, these are the things that if we aren't using our awareness to transform our relationship to these behaviors become just, quote, the way we are. And then we use that to justify, well, you know how I am. This is just the way I am. Why do you want me to be different? This is just the way I am. But it's not the way I am. It's the way I'm being. It's the way I'm behaving. And that's changeable. And the best way to change something is not through shame and guilt and punishment. That doesn't work. That never works. We think that it works because we beat somebody emotionally into submission, or we beat them economically into submission, or we shame and guilt them or punish them to a point of we have made their soul cry uncle. And we think that it works, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work on others, and it certainly doesn't work on ourselves. Softening ourselves works. I have yet to find a time where softening my heart and breathing gently into my belly has not been beneficial to my overall safety and well-being. I have not found that to be inaccurate. That is every time it is beneficial. So I want to say as well, for those in the Sangha who have not heard, one of our Sangha members, a person who's been with Journey Home Meditation since the very beginning, Trice Knight, left his body last week. And it, Trice had been sick for some time, or his health had been, he'd been struggling with health for a long time. But this was not something that we were prepared for. No, it wasn't clear. It kind of happened out of, in the night. And yeah, so it's taken some time. It's going to take some time to understand that Trice is no longer with us. And but I just want to give a moment of silence and a few breaths for Trice. He always loved the breath work and talked greatly about how breath work has changed his life and brought him so much joy and happiness. So let's take a few breaths together for Trice. Sleep well, wake well, Trice. It's been a lovely go round with you this time. So, the poem that reached out to me this morning is a poem by David White, from David White's book, Essentials. This is a collection put together by David White's partner. And this poem really spoke to me. It's called Sometimes. Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place, beginning to lead everywhere. Requests to stop what you are doing right now and stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away. Sometimes, by David White. I love this poem. I love the way that it invokes in us this old way. Like it's reminding us, you know this already. You know this. If you move carefully through the forest, breathing like the ones in the old stories, we know those stories of these brilliant trackers or hunters or these seventh level kung fu masters, who can breathe with a feather on their lips and not move the feather with their breath, and this is reminding us, how to do this. Just do it. Just try this. You don't have to do it as if it's your instinct. You can remind yourself to do this thing. And then when you do the thing, when you soften yourself, some subtle voices are going to come up. In the stillness and silence, there are going to be questions that start to arise. Take them on. That's the practice. Take on those questions, because it may stop what you're doing and what you're becoming, and it may change your entire life to hear those tiny, quiet questions. Questions that can make or unmake a life, the poet says. Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining this morning. We're going to take a few breaths together and find a little bit of meditative space. But before I do that, I just want to also let you all know that I'm going to be leaving Facebook personally. I'm going to, for some time, I'll keep Journey Home Meditation having a little bit of a presence on Facebook. I'll be able to stream, but I probably won't be interacting or putting the audio clips, the links to the audio up, because I'm going to be not utilizing my personal page any longer. I'm now moving over to Substack, which is a format I really like. It's sort of this perfect blend of blog and social media. You can follow each other's stacks. It kind of reminds me a bit of LiveJournal, for any of you old school live journalers. Yeah, I had a live journal. I actually wrote some lovely poems on there, I think, and definitely some sappy ones at least. But I will be making that transition at the end of October. So November will be starting fully on Substack. But in the meantime, I'm using it. But it's journeyhomemeditation.substack.com. You can subscribe for free. I will have some abilities on there for people to donate if you'd like. But you can engage, you can interact, you can start your own free Substack account, and we can share around all these things. So I just like the Substack format because it's slower. It's not created for the purpose of inciting emotional reactions. Facebook's algorithm is entirely created to incite an emotional reaction, whereas Substack is a bit longer form, a bit slower. We can take our time with one another, and we don't have to feel like we have to respond or react directly to any little quip that somebody puts down. So that's just for my benefit. It's my benefit to leave Facebook behind. I've tried it a few times in the past, and I keep coming back, and I'm recognizing now that I was using it as a substitute, uh, or as the antidote to my loneliness, but it's not helping. It doesn't help me. In the times that I'm lonely, it just deepens my emotional scarring, I think. It doesn't actually bring me community and togetherness. So I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it behind, leaving the scrolling behind. Um, and that's not a directive for anybody else to do it, but it's just something I came to a decision where, I just can't participate in this format anymore. It's not helping any of us, in my view. It's not. It's not there to actually help us. There are other ways we can connect. There are other ways we can slow down and we can soften ourselves together. So right now, if you'd like, you can place your feet flat to the floor or have your legs crossed in a number of positions. However it is, you're going to move into your meditation posture in this moment. What we're looking for is simply a place of balance in the body, a place to allow ourselves to soften, beginning with the belly. Breathe in through the nose to the bottom of the belly and soften yourself. Breathe in and breathe out. I'm going to breathe in for a count of 4. Breathe in and breathe out for a count of 7. Breathe in and breathe out. And once you've found that stillness and quietness inside of the body, notice the breath and how your emotions and your thoughts are connected deeply to the way that you breathe. Breathing out, feel the sensation moving from your belly into your chest. Breathing in, feel the body enlarge and bring in all of that life, stretching your ribs. Now you can begin to gently move the fingers and the toes, becoming innately one with the feeling, Just understand that this is not happening to you. This is not happening to the body. This is you experiencing movement. And I know that may sound really fluffy and silly, but when you can come down to the base, most primary sensations and meet them with a level of seriousness, then you can take anybody seriously. You can sit in front of anybody, even their smallest of things, and say, hey, that's remarkable. You can remark upon that. You can take note of that, whatever it is. It's important. And then let it go. Now, the way that the dog poop or the battery or the low power affected my sensibilities in that moment, that was really important that I recognize that. Otherwise, it's going to take the steering wheel and drive me into this grumpy, bitter place. And I would start behaving that way. So I have to recognize, oh, this was important. That shift in my day was important for a moment. Now I can let it go. All right. It's no big deal. Trungpa Rinpoche used to say that. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He'd say that about everything. It's no big deal. Oh, it's no big deal. You're only dying. It's no big deal. Oh, little dog poop? No big deal. Oh, an existential crisis at 6 a.m.? No big deal. It's a good teaching, and it's a good practice. But sometimes it's just out of reach. Let's be honest. Sometimes no big deal is such a difficult mantra. And sometimes it doesn't even feel appropriate, even though it is. Even though it is. No matter what you're experiencing, it is appropriate to come down to it's no big deal. We can do this. We got this. But sometimes it doesn't feel appropriate to our egos. And that's okay. We need to tend to those the same as anything else. Right? We need to take care of our egos just like we take care of our body or take care of our vehicle or take care of our anger or take care of each other. So softening ourselves helps. Thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. I truly do love you, each and every one of you, and it's not personal. You didn't have to earn it, and you're not going to lose it. I just need to remind myself of it. Okay. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for being here today. Hariom.